Okay, so the topic of today's presentation is it possible to transition to electric mobility completely within the next few years? So I'm going to answer this question by looking at the challenges, what is the current scenario in terms of the electric mobility, and then I'll go from there. Okay, so hmm, it's not going to the next slide. Okay, just let me see whether it is able to go to the next slide. No. Yeah. Okay. So the presentation outline is going to be somewhat like this. How do we fight global warming and climate change? We are actually seeing the effects tremendously now. Saudi Arabia has seen some snowfall, and Hyderabad itself has seen so much of rains this time, almost until November. So climate change is really very much seen everywhere. And why electric vehicles? And what are all the general aspects, and what are all the different components of electric vehicles, and what are all the challenges generally in implementation of electric vehicle technology? So under this particular challenges, I'm planning to talk about four things mainly. What are the propulsion systems that are used for EVs, and what are the challenges with respect to implementing them? Battery technology, which is actually powering all the electric vehicles, and charging infrastructure, what kind of limitations we have, and finally, can we use electric transportation, particularly for mass transit or freight transit? So with that, I'll kind of conclude my talk. So EVs have been talked about in the last 15 to 20 years extensively because of huge amount of carbon dioxide emission, and glaciers have been melting. Polar bears are really having a tough time because ice sheets are disappearing. Sea levels are rising, and flash floods and hurricanes and non-uniform rainfall is seen all over the globe. So when we want to slow down climate change, mainly we have to adopt a three-pronged approach from the electrical engineering viewpoint. Can we use all the energy in the form of electricity rather than using fossil fuels like coal or gasoline or something like that? And even the electricity, whatever we are using, if it can be generated using renewables, that may be a better option. The third point, which is the most important point, is can we improve the efficiency and conserve energy rather than generating more amount of electricity? Will we be able to make do with less amount of electricity by making our processes more efficient? And one more thing is the mindset of the people have to change, because all of us who are somewhat economically much better, we tend to use more and more resources without really thinking whether we would be able to leave anything for the next generation at all. Especially our generation people, my generation people, have to think about this quite a bit. And you guys who are younger, who are students, you guys have to think how to change the mindset of your older generation as well as your younger generation, both. That's very important so that we save the earth. Renewable based power generation, we say, is much better. That is because if 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide is emitted for 1 unit generation of electricity, 1 kilowatt hour generation of electricity, solar makes it 25 times cleaner. That means instead of 1 kg, 1/25th of a kg, that is 40 grams of carbon dioxide is emitted, whereas wind makes it even 100 times cleaner. But all these things are valid only when we talk about megawatt rate of power plant. If we are talking about rooftop solar or rooftop wind conversion system, in those things, the savings are reduced to almost 1/10. That is one thing. And recycling the solar cell is not going to be easy. And even wind turbine blades, they are made up of fiberglass kind of material. So it is not environmentally friendly. So in that sense, what we call as green energy, whether it is really green energy, that we need to answer that question. That is not very easy. Whereas energy conservation is a much better option compared to what we were using as incandescent lamps. LED lamps are much better in terms of giving out the light at much lesser amount of energy consumed. The same way, if you look at heating, ventilating, and air conditioning system as well as industrial processes, if we can use adjustable speed drives, they can definitely save on the energy quite a bit because of first of all, adjusting the speed as per the requirement rather than, wasting that energy in some kind of rheostat or somewhere else. But so we need to really think about making our industrial processes much more energy efficient. Um, let's now come to exactly electric vehicles because I'm going to rather look at this in two parts. One is basically electric vehicles for road transport. Then we will worry about freight transport and mass transit system. So the major problem with all the IC engine based vehicles which is flying on the road, the efficiency is really, really poor. And especially in urban driving, if we are going to go in stop and go traffic, it is going to be less than 20%. That is when I talk about well to wheel efficiency, that is oil well to the final transmission wheel efficiency. And there is huge amount of pollution. You know that most of the emissions from these IC engine based vehicles are carcinogens. Fossil fuels are becoming costlier in the last couple of years. The prices have skyrocketed. Of course, Ukraine war was one of the reasons. Now Gulf war and so many other factors that is actually causing the fossil fuel the cost to go up. And it is also getting depleted. We are not having enough resources in terms of gasoline and diesel and even coal. And many of the IC engine based vehicle, the so-called electronic control is only superficial control. It is not really internally, we are not controlling anything by electronic control. We are only monitoring. It's not even control most of the times. And autonomous driving, if we want to really go for driverless cars, the easiest way out would be to go to electric vehicles. If you look at the electric transportation in general, the major advantages, whether it is mass transit system or battery-driven electric vehicle, the noise will be much lower. It will not be definitely noisy at all. Efficiency is much better. Pollution is much lower. Of course, while generating electricity, whether we are creating pollution or not, that is a different question altogether. We'll come to that later. If you look at actually electricity that is being generated from renewables, if they can be integrated either with the charging stations or even with our own electric vehicle, that would be great if that can be done. And there can be many onboard energy storage devices, supercapacitors, flywheels, and batteries. All of them can be integrated with our electric vehicle, which can actually make it run for probably, more mileage, depending upon what kind of energy storage system we are using. One major advantage is the kinetic energy that is stored in the rotating parts of the vehicle that can be converted into electricity and it can be used to charge the battery using regenerative braking. This cannot be done in IC engine based vehicle. Most of the times what we see is that the brakes, when they are applied, the kinetic energy is converted into some kind of friction and it is dissipated in the form of heat. So it is never recovered. And most of the sensing that is done even in IC engine based vehicle, the signals come in the form of electrical signals. So the feedback mechanism and sensor outputs can be integrated much more easily and controlled much more easily with electric vehicles. But there are many challenges that are associated with the electric vehicles. Range of the vehicle is a major concern because most of the vehicles, what we see as of today, all of them have maximum like 520 to 580 kilometers as the range, inclusive of BYD or Tesla cars. And the charging time for the battery is very, very high. We say that we have fast chargers, we can charge in 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But if we do that on a regular basis, the battery life can become, really, really low. Its longevity will be adversely affected. How do we really optimize the size of the battery and motor? That is another big challenge, because everybody is talking about initial acceleration, and the acceleration has to be high, the motor size has to be high, because it has to generate a large amount of torque to haul that big load, big weight with respect to the electric vehicles overall structure. We still don't have sufficient battery charging infrastructure, especially in India. So how will we really overcome that? That is another question. And although we said integrating renewables will be a very positive aspect for electric vehicle, it's not going to be that easy. And once we integrate renewables, the vehicles will become heavily weather dependent. And one more thing is, how are we going to improve the efficiency of the electric vehicles on the whole? How can we improve the diagnostics so that untoward incidents do not happen? And how do we improve the range? Last but not the least, the cost, if you look at the electric vehicles, it's tremendously high as of now. So how are we going to really make it cost effective? For example, if you try to look at Maruti Desire or something like that, it is about 10 lakhs. If you want to buy it, and on the road price, when it comes on the road, the price is about 10 lakhs. Whereas when you want to purchase an electric vehicle, even base level model costs as high as 25 lakhs, mostly 25 lakhs rupees. So it's definitely about 2.5 times. So it's not going to be easy for anybody to shell out that kind of money. Globally, if you look at the electric vehicle scenario, in 2023 December, when it was counted, about 40 million registrations of electric vehicles have been done. This is up from 16 million in 2022. So that is a huge growth in 1 year. But out of 40 million electric vehicles, almost 58% are produced by China. And even out of the 40 million vehicles, almost 60% of the electric cars are registered in China. And if you actually, look at some of the surveys that are released by, automotive agencies, they say 97% of Chinese people say they are willing to buy the next car to be an electric vehicle. Whereas in US, only 35% of the people say they would like to have an electric vehicle. They would like to buy an electric vehicle in the next few years. And 43% in Europe. That means in China, for whatever reason, the electric vehicles have become really a great success. And in the US, one major deterring factor is the insurance itself is very, very high for an electric vehicle. The insurance that they have to pay for an electric vehicle is almost of the order of 4,000 US dollars per year, whereas it's only about $500 per year for a gasoline-based vehicle. So it's a huge difference, really. And if you look at the sales that have taken place all over the world, the maximum sales in the first half of 2024 has happened mainly for Build Your Dreams car. That is about 18 lakhs car that have been sold within the first 6 months of 2024. Build Your Dream is from China. If you look at who uses the maximum number of electric vehicles all over the world, Norway leads the show, and then Iceland, and then Sweden and Holland, and then after that China. But China's market is really, really big. Even 22% of the vehicles, being electric vehicles in China makes a significant fraction of the whole number of electric vehicles that are plying on the roads of the earth. And China has huge number of charging points already, fast charging points. So, there are different factors that really influence the usage of electric vehicle. In Norway, particularly, the electric vehicles are used immensely because of government subsidies and huge number of electric chargers available. And also the parking actually is easily available for electric vehicles. In fact, they don't even collect any charges for parking, and toll charges are also much lower in Norway if it is an electric vehicle. Whereas if you look at third world countries like India or Thailand and things like that, we generally see more of two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And two-wheelers, most of them actually are having 10 kilowatt hour kind of battery, and they have only about 50 to 60 kilometer range. Whereas three-wheelers, many of them have 12 kilowatt hour or a little over that kind of battery, and they can go at most to about 150 kilometer. There are huge number of manufacturers for two-wheelers and three-wheelers all over the country, but four-wheelers, we have pretty limited number. Tata Motors, Mahindra, Hyundai, Maruti actually is still not selling. They have said that they are going to release, but these are the major three brands. Tata Motors, Mahindra, and Hyundai are the major three brands which sell a lot of electric vehicle. But MG and even a few BYD cars are seen on the roads. There are trucks from Tata Motors, Ashok Leyland, Daimler. All these things are again electric trucks. So they are also coming into the market slowly. If you look at Tesla, in 2015, they started making electric cars, especially with lithium-ion battery. It started initially with three-phase induction motor. Now they found that that is not all that efficient, so they have even shifted that to three-phase synchronous motor. After Model S, Model X and Model Y came up, but Model 3 came up very recently, and Model 3 users, some of them use PMSM and some of them use PM assisted synchronous reluctance motor. Most of them have the weight anywhere ranging from 1800 kg to 2500 kg. And if you look at the range, invariably it is from about 400 kilometer to about 580 kilometer range. And all of them use anywhere between 75 kilowatt hour to 100 kilowatt hour battery, lithium ion battery. And many of these cars are all-wheel drives, which means every wheel is going to have a motor of its own. So all of them have to have a coordinated control by wire. Basically, it is steer by wire. That's what they say. They don't have differential gear. They don't have other kind of gear arrangements. Everything is done electrically. On the other hand, compared to Tesla, if you look at BYD, which is a Chinese brand, it is actually the sales have overtaken Tesla in the last quarter of 2023 itself. And in 2024, they have been leading the sales all over the globe. And if you look at actually their SUV, which is Seal, that costs around 63,000 US dollars, whereas the Tesla 3, which is also like a luxury car, that is costing around 95,000 US dollars. So it is a huge amount of difference in terms of cost. So if at all the US market is becoming open, it's not going to, probably, especially in the wake of Trump getting elected. But if at all Chinese market, US market gets open for China, then definitely they are going to lead the market completely. One of the top manufacturers of car, that is Toyota from Japan, they have never been in favor of electric vehicle because they always go by demand rather from the customer rather than regulator. Even if the government is passing some regulation, they don't want to go along with that. They feel that electric vehicle technology is not mature enough, and that's why they are going mostly with hybrid vehicles. And they have really made huge profit because of hybrid electric vehicle. You can see that in 2023-24, they have made a profit to the tune of $31.8 billion. Whereas Tesla actually in the second quarter of 2024, they have made only a meager profit of $1.48 billion. This is down from the original profit they had made in 2023 during the same quarter. It is down by 40%. And Ford has lost a lot of money. It has lost to the tune of $2.5 billion. So overall, the electric vehicle, although we thought it is taking off in the US, it looks like it has kind of gone down in the last 1 year because of various reasons, which we will look at eventually. And Toyota wanted to invest on hydrogen fuel cell based vehicle. Even that they are kind of toning it down because they have not seen so much of sales happening in hydrogen fuel cell based vehicle. Again, refilling the hydrogen is a big problem. How are we going to do that? That is not very clear. These are the typical facts and figures with respect to electric cars that are being sold in India. So you can see that most of them have a price anywhere between 18 lakhs to about 25 lakhs. And you can see Hyundai Ioniq and BYD Seal, they are quite high in terms of their cost. And most of them use PMSM. And the permanent magnet, availability of permanent magnet is a big problem. And the range, if you look at it, the maximum is only for BYD, which is 580 kilometers. That is also, it is theoretical condition. I don't know exactly in Indian road conditions what kind of range we will get. That is a big question mark. So if you look at India, most of the car makers take their propulsion systems and electronic control unit and everything directly from various feeder industries. So, for example, Tata Motors, Hyundai, and all these people try to purchase directly their propulsion system, control, and communication modules from, for example, Bosch or Automotive Axles, Valeo, Shakti Pumps, and so on. So they take it from many people. And there are like other feeder industries for two-wheeler like Hella, TVS, Hitachi, all these things also. They manufacture a lot of automotive electronic parts and lighting for cars. So most of the four-wheeler companies do not have, as of now, competency to fix any problem if there is a problem in the car, in their electric vehicle. They only have engineers who would be able to give them specifications as to what to buy and put it right there into their car. And they may be able to test some of them. They may be able to identify some problem and tell them the original equipment manufacturer that this is the kind of problem we are facing and how to fix it. So many engineers in four-wheeler industries like Tata Motors, Hyundai are not equipped to handle the problems themselves. That's what I'm trying to get at. So electric vehicle general configuration is somewhat like this. So there is a battery pack which is actually propelling the entire vehicle. So to make sure that the battery pack is having good health, there has to be a good battery management system. Even this battery management system is in research stage. You cannot say it has, like any industry has a very mature battery management system. And there will be generally an onboard charging unit, which will be of a very low kilowatt capacity. That's the reason why it takes anywhere between 6 to 20 hours to charge the battery pack completely. Then the battery pack's voltage and the inverter's input voltage may not match with each other. So we will need a DC to DC converter in between, which will also incidentally feed many auxiliaries like air conditioning system or infotainment system and electronic control unit and so on and so forth. And this inverter will feed the motor, and the motor is going to essentially send the transmission to the wheels. The same motor will work as a generator when we want to do regenerator braking, and the entire energy power flow will be in the opposite sense until the battery pack. So that's what happens in an electric vehicle. But what I have shown here is only with one motor for all the four wheels. But sometimes we may have, for example, all-wheel drive, like every wheel will have its own motor, and there will be independent controllers for each of these motors, but it will be a coordinated control between all the four motors. So in that sense, we don't need to have differential or any other gear. So when you have the motor running along with the wheel itself, it might be advantageous to have something like an axial flux motor, where the conductors are going to be like the armature, or the conductors are going to be like spokes of a wheel, and the magnets are going to be embedded into the two rotors, which are actually closing the stator in between. And you can see that the magnetic field lines are going to flow from, let us say, from one rotor to the other rotor. So it is generally known as axial flux and radial conductor kind of machine. So this kind of motor is known as hub motor, and it will be able to function with a higher flux density, and there is no transmission needed. Directly the rotation will be imparted to the wheel. So the efficiency will be much better. So there is a lot of focus that is now a research focus on design and implementation of axial flux motor in both PMSM as well as PMBLDC. The motors that are normally employed in the power train are either DC motor, which is only for vehicles which are plying within closed environment, like let us say within airport, the cleaning vehicles, or within airport from one terminal to another terminal. Those can be charged easily also, and they don't require much of maintenance because it is kind of dust-free environment. So DC motors can be used in those. Then induction motors were initially tried out, as I told you, in Tesla's Model S and even Mahindra e-Verito, but now induction motors are sidelined completely, and most the people what they use is PMSM in four-wheelers. But PMBLDC is used in two-wheelers because it requires only a motor which is less than 30 kilowatt rating, and PMBLDCs are available for such a rating. Switch reluctance motor is being researched even now, and Japanese people research this extensively. But until now, the efficiency is still limited for SRM. That is the reason why it has not come to the forefront. But in my opinion, probably in future, SRM might come to the forefront because of not having any permanent magnet material within the drive. There are many control techniques that are also employed, like field-oriented control, direct torque control, direct power control, and predictive torque control. And these are aiming at minimizing torque pulsations so that you have a smooth ride. And it also wants to improve the dynamic response and efficiency of these motor drives. So that is the reason different control techniques are being employed. But most of the times you will see FOC is the one that is being employed in many of the electric vehicles still. And to improve the range, generally regenerative braking helps a lot. If you look at actually Delhi Metro, they save almost to the tune of 4 crores of rupees in electricity bill per year by incorporating regenerative braking. Renewables are integrated to the vehicle. That will be a very big advantage to improve the range of the vehicle. So you might have heard of Sunrun Motors, which is in Ghaziabad, which makes three-wheelers, which has integrated solar PV on the roof as well as on the side panel. This actually improves the range of the vehicle. But overall, if you look at it, the efficiency is not very high, and it is very highly sensitive to weather condition. So this is a typical diagram for solar integrated electric vehicle. There will be a DC to DC converter which will also take care of maximum power point tracking, and it can send the excess energy to the battery if there is any. Otherwise, it will directly send it to the DC AC inverter and to the motor, which will propel the vehicle normally. So this is the way generally the renewables are integrated into an electric vehicle. One thing that needs to be focused on when we are designing the electric vehicle is sizing of the battery, because battery is the costliest and heaviest component of any electric vehicle. And if we have a motor with higher efficiency, that will either reduce the size of the battery or improve the range of the vehicle. That is the reason why PMSM, especially IPMSM, is ruling the roost, because their efficiency is really, really good. That is the reason. And the weight of the vehicle, if it is around 1800 or 2200 kg, almost half that weight is towards battery. So if it is like 2000 kg, 1000 kg will be battery weight itself. And arrangement of battery becomes a big problem. That is the reason, because it can shift the center of gravity completely. That is the reason why the batteries are generally spread out along the floor of the vehicle. So if you want to replace the battery all of a sudden, it will not be so easy. It will take a few days to, remove all the connections and, replace the complete battery. That is the problem generally. And interior permanent magnet machine is preferred in all the electric vehicle, not only because of the efficiency, it will also have a much wider speed range. That is also one of the reasons. And this is generally the requirement of torque speed characteristics of any electric vehicle. You can see that it's not only electric vehicle, any vehicle for that matter. Initially, at very low speeds, you have to make the wheels roll, which are very heavy. Basically, the vehicle is going to be heavy. So you need a huge amount of torque. And as the speed increases, the torque requirement is going to come down, because once the wheel starts rolling, then you are not going to have much of friction component. And at low speeds, you would not have any aerodynamic problem also. Only when the speed increases slowly, you will have some amount of aerodynamic drag. This characteristic is very, very similar to series motor. That's the reason we were using series motor in olden days for any traction kind of application. So let me look at now challenges pertaining to electric vehicles. So the first one is propulsion systems. So in propulsion system, as I told you, these are the different types of motors that are being used. And currently PMBLDC is the preferred choice for two-wheeler, and PMSM, especially IPMSM, is the preferred choice for four-wheelers. Both require permanent magnet, and we do not have much of permanent magnet storage in our country. So that becomes one of the major challenges. And how are we going to size the motor clearly for our application particularly? So these are big question marks we need to answer. And control techniques, as I told you, these are the control techniques that are generally used, but FOC, field oriented control technique, is the one which is extensively used in all the four-wheelers. And lately, there are multi-level and modular multi-level converters being talked about even for electric vehicle. But multi-level converter is more pragmatic, because you may have multiple batteries and each of the battery will feed one level of the converter, and together they'll be feeding the motor drive. But modular multi-level is generally used more in under the sea, that is oil drilling kind of application, because there you might remove one faulty module and insert a new module right there. So in those cases, debugging the module in field conditions may not be possible, especially under the sea. That is the reason why modular multi-level is used. But multi-level converters could be a pragmatic choice for electric four-wheelers. And most of the converters, especially DC-DC converter, definitely should have bidirectional power flow so that regenerative braking can be incorporated successfully. And gallium nitride and silicon carbide based power converters are being talked about quite a bit these days, because they will have lower resistance and they will be able to reduce the losses and heat sink whatever you're looking at to dissipate the heat. That can be reduced quite a bit in size. So overall, if you look at electric vehicle, the space is at a premium. So if we can reduce the size of the converter, size of the motor, that will be a very good thing to do. So that is the reason why gallium nitride and silicon carbide have come to the forefront lately. If you look at EV motor drives, the major focus is on improving the efficiency, and starting torque is really required. High starting torque is needed because generally, if you look at Tesla or BYD cars, they accelerate the entire 2000 kg weight of electric vehicle within a matter of 3.8 seconds, from 0 kilometer per hour to 100 kilometer per hour. So the acceleration is so high, and if you calculate F equal to ma, mass multiplied by the acceleration, the entire force requirement becomes very high. So the torque requirement becomes really, really large. That is one reason why very large motors are used in most of the electric vehicles. Otherwise, if you look at the average value of torque requirement or power requirement, the motor size can be much smaller. So what is employed actually in the electric vehicle is much larger in terms of the size, the kilowatt capacity of the motor, because of the acceleration requirement what we need during starting. The dynamic response, whether we can improve by using proper control technique, this is another aspect we normally focus on. And the operation should be maintenance free, and the control should be easy. And sensorless control invariably is preferred unless we are able to integrate the sensors with the motor drive all itself, and it should not move apart. Otherwise, the Hall effect sensor and other things, the position sensors, can give you very wrong signals. And the machine should be able to operate over a wide range of speed. These are extremely important. These are individual motors that we look into. PMBLDC motor basically is used as a hub motor along with every wheel, if it is possible, for the two-wheeler. And you can see that although the control is quite accurate and it can be made simple, rotor position information becomes extremely necessary. That's why, along with the converter itself, I would not call it complex because it's a VSI, voltage source inverter, after all. But the control circuitry becomes very complex because of the presence of rotor position sensor as well. Switch reluctance motor probably is one of the best options in terms of maintenance-free operation. But one major problem with the switch reluctance motor is its torque pulsation. And because of torque pulsations, the efficiency is also not very good. And that is one reason why it has not been successful until now for employing in any of the electric vehicles. Hopefully in future it might improve in terms of its performance because of a lot of research work going on, and it may be employed in some of the electric vehicles. Permanent magnet synchronous motor, there are two types, surface mounted and IPM-SM. IPM-SM is the one which is commonly used in all the electric vehicle because of its capacity to produce reluctance torque. That is one thing. And second thing is, it is also a very rugged structure because of the magnet being embedded inside. So these two things together, it makes this the best choice for electric vehicle. Its speed, range, and efficiency is also really, really good compared to induction motor and as well as surface mounted synchronous motor, surface mounted permanent magnet synchronous motor. This is another motor. Synchronous reluctance motor is another motor which is being researched heavily for electric vehicle application. This is basically like a cage induction motor without the rotor bar. So wherever you are actually carving some, slits, there the reluctance becomes more, and here the reluctance becomes less. So one will be direct axis, the other one will be quadrature axis. And there is no winding in the rotor. There is no permanent magnet in the rotor. So production cost will be much lower for synchronous reluctance motor. But the torque producing capability is not as high as PMSM. That is the reason Model 3 of Tesla vehicle is using PM assisted synchronous reluctance motor. So control techniques I'm not going to again dwell on. FOC is the major control technique that is being used, which is actually going to decompose the stator current along and perpendicular to the flux axis. So along direct axis and quadrature axis. And you are going to mainly control the quadrature axis component of current because you don't want to play around with the flux normally, unless you are operating above base speed range. So if you are going to very large speed, then you might manipulate the direct axis component of current also to ensure that field weakening is incorporated. Now, let us look at the battery technology. In battery technology, of course, even now, many of the three-wheelers, e-rickshaw kind of thing, they all use lead-acid batteries. Lithium-ion batteries and solid-state batteries, where the electrolytes are basically solids. So there, your conductivity is not so great, due to which the efficiency somewhat comes down. But transportation becomes much simpler in batteries with solid electrolytes. So lithium-ion battery, ever since Tesla started using it, that has become really the major driver as far as the electric vehicle industry is concerned. But lithium ferrous phosphate, that is iron phosphate battery, that is the one that is being used by BYD cars. And they have created a technology called blade batteries. Blade batteries are advantageous in two ways. One is they can be stacked very easily because they are thin and they really are having a good surface area. So they can be stacked one on the top of the other very easily. And because of the larger surface area, there is a better way to dissipate the heat. So they will not explode so easily like what we normally see in lithium ion batteries. There is a lot of research going on to see whether lithium can be replaced by sodium, because sodium is a little less reactive as compared to lithium. And there are nickel metal hydride batteries that are also being researched. Zinc air battery or aluminum air battery, these are being researched extensively. Even from IIT Madras, you must have seen in the newspaper, there was some news item saying that they are trying to use this zinc air battery for electric vehicle. One major advantage in zinc air battery is that you can just replace the electrolyte, which is air, by fresh air. Similarly, you can also replace the electrode zinc by a new electrode, and none of these things are toxic. Whereas if you look at any of the other batteries, lead or lithium or sodium, all of them are highly reactive and they can be really toxic. That is the problem. So one question we need to answer in terms of electric vehicles is, if we are using lithium based or lead based or cobalt or sodium based batteries, all of them are unfriendly materials. Ultimately, how are we going to dispose them? Maybe when the battery's energy capacity comes down to 80%, it can be used in stationary applications like microgrid and such things. But once it is completely worn out, its complete usage is done, how are we going to dispose it? I don't think there has been any tangible answer for this. And another thing is, we have heard of so many batteries exploding from two-wheeler, especially when they are being charged at home. So whatever we have as BMS, battery management system as of now, they are not able to estimate the state of charge and state of health very easily. So how are we going to devise methods to sense state of charge and state of health, and how are we going to ensure that people around are safe? That is a big question that we need to answer. The third challenge that we face with respect to electric vehicle is charging infrastructure. So I'm sure all of you know that the level 1 charger is onboard charger, which is available well within the car, which can charge from our household power outlet itself. So it can charge from 120 volts single phase AC or 230 volts single phase AC. And the maximum capacity is only of the order of 2 kilowatt. So it takes anywhere between 8 hours to 20 hours to charge the vehicle completely, charge the battery completely from almost 10% to 90%. Level 2 charger is a little better when it is charging from a three-phase supply sometimes, and it can be as high as 19.2 kilowatt, the capacity. So this may be able to charge the vehicle anywhere between 2 hours to almost 8 or 10 hours. So this is a little better. This can also be an onboard charger, whereas anything above this is fast charger, and fast charger can be typically 50 kilowatt capacity. It can be 500 volts and about 100 ampere, which will account for 50 kilowatt. And if you really want to charge the battery within 20 or 30 minutes, then typically if you look at Tesla car battery, they are all about 80 kilowatt hour or 75 kilowatt hour. So it will still take from a 50 kilowatt charger, it will take anywhere between 1 to 1.5 hours. So if you want to charge it still within 20 minutes or something, you have to increase the charger's capacity to twice or thrice. Only then you would be able to charge it quickly. One major challenge with respect to making battery infrastructures properly in Indian condition especially, will we be able to support all the vehicle demand from our grid? Currently, our capacity is only as high as 400 gigawatt. So, will we be able to support the entire electric vehicle demand if we really think that by 2030, 50% of the vehicles plying on the road should be electric in nature? I don't know. Should we really design our distribution system? Because currently the kind of power shutdown still we have is enormous. So will we be able to support all these electric vehicle charging simultaneously? And we are not having sufficient number of electric charging infrastructure as of now. And if we are talking about within 20 or 30 minutes, a 30 kilowatt hour battery needs to be charged, then it is going to draw as high as 200 ampere. And if we are talking about 2 or 3 vehicles are simultaneously charging, then 600 amperes have to flow from the electric charging station. So will it cause any fire hazard? What kind of protection system should be put in place? All these things need to be talked about. And can we integrate renewables with the charging stations? Are we capable of doing that? Especially if they are within the city. For solar PV or wind, you need a huge amount of area. How are we going to do that? So if there are power cuts, especially in village areas, how are we going to handle charging of EV? So these are questions we need to answer. Currently, if you look at Indian condition, there are about 12,150 charging stations in India. If you look at February or March 2024, that is the statistics that is being given by Ministry of Power. 37% of them are in Bangalore and 25% are in Maharashtra and another 16% are in Delhi, Gurgaon area. And many of them are further in Kerala and Tamil Nadu, whereas if you look at the total number of electric vehicle registrations, 35% of them are registered in UP. So how are we going to really make sure that the charging infrastructure expands to UP and MP and other places? And the Confederation of Indian Industries said if we want to actually have almost 50% of the vehicles plying on the road to be electric vehicles by 2030, then we have to have 1.32 million charging stations all over the country, which actually expects that every year we have to install 400,000 charging stations in the next few years. Is it going to be really viable? That is a big question again. I'm not going into the details of the charging structure. The thing is, most of the times what we do is to use a dual active bridge for charging station. And invariably, dual active bridge again is built, in a few tens of kilowatt or, something like that. So how are we going to really build again charging infrastructure with much higher capacity? Will we put many of them in parallel? How will we do that? That is another thing we need to think about. There are also wireless power transfer structure that is being talked about. So in wireless power transfer, what is normally done is in one lane out of many lanes in a highway, one lane is designated as charging lane, and there will be coils which will be the transmitters which are buried underneath the road, and the receiver will be a secondary of the transformer which will be sitting in the vehicle, and that will be converted into DC, and then there will be a DC to DC converter which will actually charge the battery. So this is what is done in wireless power transfer. One major problem with this is the efficiency is going to be not very high for wireless power transfer because the primary and secondary are separated. The primary is going to be buried underneath the road and the secondary is going to be in the vehicle. So they are far apart. That is one thing. And second thing is in a country like India, where there is absolutely no lane discipline, will we ensure that people drive on a particular lane, the electric vehicle lane, where they want to charge the vehicle? So this is existing already in South Korea, where there is a pretty designated and disciplined transport system. But whether it will work in India, that we need to think about. For mass transit and freight transit, we can think of using electric vehicle. That is a more viable option. You can see very well that metro is coming in most of the big cities in India. That is essentially mass transit system for people, and that can become smart city, basically with this kind of transportation infrastructure. Whereas freight transit, that is being talked about in Europe quite a bit. So what they are thinking of is having the truck in a port city where you have to transport huge amount of material, maybe from a manufacturing unit to the port, so that it can be sent further for export or whatever. In those cases, if you want to have a battery within the vehicle itself, that itself will become very heavy. So there will not be any weight left over for payload. That is the reason why they are actually having a overhead pantograph which will collect electricity from these wires, and it will be able to run this truck on electricity. So it is like a tram which used to be existing earlier in Calcutta and all, and without rail. There is no rail. So again, this requires lane discipline, and it has to ensure that only electric trucks are plying on the road in that particular lane. This is still in experimental stage as far as Europe is concerned. In Germany and Netherlands, they are trying this out in, many of the port cities, but they have not become commonplace even in Europe. So for this to come to India, it might take much more time. I want you to think about a few things here. This is a slide I got from Canada in one of the organizations in Canada, which is like an NGO, which is talking about making Earth green. So they are asking whether really electric vehicle is green, because if you want really 12 kg of lithium, then you have to move 250 tons of soil and 13 kg of nickel and 22 kg of manganese. If you want really, lithium batteries to be made, and you need huge amount of water, and you have to essentially, for mining lithium, you will require the Caterpillar company, which actually makes mining equipment. and it will be actually guzzling up 1,000 liters of diesel in 12 hours. So we are telling that we are making a zero emission electric vehicle with lithium, nickel, cobalt, manganese, all of them in the battery. And of course, don't forget what amount of plastic and other materials go in making the car itself, and how much of diesel is guzzled up in mining lithium. So are we really going to say that, electric vehicle is green? That is a big question mark. And we need to answer that question before we say we are going to go green by using electric vehicle. Another major factor in terms of human resources that we need to think about is most of the four-wheeler manufacturers as of today, whether it is Tata Motors or Mahindra or Hyundai, all of them are mechanical engineers and technicians. If we are completely going towards electric vehicle, many of them will become jobless unless we do some kind of upskilling. It's going to be really a big problem for them. And if you look at many of the electric vehicles in India, they are getting, directly parts imported from other countries. And for example, Tata Motor trucks, they all take from the parts from China, and the Ashok Leyland trucks take the propulsion system from Dana Corporation, USA. So many of the personnel who are employed in these companies will not be equipped to repair this equipment unless they are trained in those particular skill sets. So how are we going to handle upgrading the human resources in these companies? Fuel cells people are talking about, but fuel cell currently is first of all very, very costly. That is one thing. And second thing is water is needed for producing hydrogen. How are we going to produce water? That is, or how are we going to have so much of water? Already there is huge amount of water scarcity all over the place. How are we really going to, channelize water for hydrogen-based vehicle? And transporting hydrogen in the form of a cylinder or something is like carrying a hydrogen bomb, especially in our country where there is so much of ups and downs on the road. You can just have explosions. So how are we going to handle it? We don't know. So overall, we have to think a lot of things before we take a call, although the government is pushing electric vehicles, saying that it is green. The first thing we need to think about is whether electric vehicle is really green. And while mining lithium, how much of energy is spent on that? And finally, even after using the lithium batteries, lithium ion batteries, how are we going to dispose those batteries? That's another thing we have to think. And even if we convert all the vehicles into electric vehicles, do we have enough electricity to charge all the electric vehicles? Considering that almost 10% of world population still does not have access to electricity. In India also, there are many villages which are still dark. So how are we going to make sure that the electricity is available for transportation? And I feel personally that there are two options we have. One is we have to promote mass transit system. Rather than every individual having a vehicle, can we make mass transit system the major transport, like what is happening in Singapore, what is happening in Europe in many places? Can we make mass transit system the major mode of transport? The second thing is, should we not reduce our needs? Like instead of, having air conditioner, for example, in every room, this is towards climate change I'm talking about. Can we have, air conditioner probably in one room, and can we run it at a temperature of 27 or 28 degrees rather than running it at 18 degrees centigrade? I mean, this is just a thought. Okay. So these are the references for my talk. And thank you so much for your attention. And if there are any questions, I would be very happy to address them. Thank you.
Any questions? Hello, ma'am. Thank you. Hello. Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Ma'am, my question was regarding there is another experimental stage technology, you can say, are the solid state transformers. So once suppose we include them in the grid, although it's a very far away thought, but if we include them in the grid, does the prognosis for electric vehicles become better or does it become worse in your estimation?
See, solid state transformers can help you in maybe long distance transmission, but still generation is, where is it going to come from? That is the question. See, ultimately what you are looking at is all the transportation need as of today, whatever is the energy need, everything has to come from electricity. That's what we are looking at. Will it be possible, really? So for that, you need to generate so much of electricity. So where will the generation come from? Will it come from solar? Will it come from wind? And are they really green? That itself is a big question. Are they really green, solar and wind?